Have you ever found yourself alone and immediately reached for your phone? Or felt that hollow ache in your chest when there's no one around? You're not alone in feeling alone. In today's constantly connected world, we've forgotten something essential: the art of being happy in our own company. This fear of solitude drives us into relationships we don't want, activities we don't enjoy, and a relentless cycle of distraction. But what if I told you that being alone isn't something to fear, but a powerful opportunity you've been missing? The wisdom I'm about to share with you comes from ancient Buddhist masters who discovered that true happiness never depends on external circumstances, not even the presence of others. These aren't just philosophical ideas. They're practical tools that have transformed countless lives across thousands of years. Today, these 5 lessons might just change everything you believe about being alone. Pay close attention, because the story I'm about to tell you contains secrets that took the most dedicated monks decades to discover. Yet you can begin applying them to your life immediately after this video. Are you ready to discover how to never feel lonely again, even when you're completely by yourself? Let's begin with the first and most foundational lesson. High in the mountains lived an old monk who had spent 40 years in solitude. His small hut overlooked a valley, and each day he would tend his garden, meditate by the stream, and prepare simple meals from what he gathered. Travelers often wondered how someone could live so remotely yet appear so content. One day, a young scholar who had read many books about enlightenment climbed the steep path to visit this monk. Out of breath and tired from his journey, he found the old man sitting quietly, watching clouds drift across the vast sky. "Master," the scholar said after catching his breath, "I don't understand how you can live here all alone. Don't you feel lonely without friends or family? What is the secret to your contentment in such isolation?" The monk smiled and gestured for the scholar to sit beside him. Instead of answering immediately, he handed the young man an empty bowl and pointed to a clear spring nearby. "Please bring me some water," he said. The scholar filled the bowl and carefully returned. The monk accepted it, looked at the perfectly still water, and said, "Look at this water. When it is undisturbed, it perfectly reflects the sky, the trees, everything around it." Our mind works the same way. The monk continued, "When we constantly seek company to avoid being alone, we create ripples in our inner water. We never see our true reflection." The first lesson of finding happiness within yourself is learning to be still in your own presence. That evening, the monk taught the scholar 4 key practices. First, he showed him how to find companionship in nature, listening to birds, feeling the wind, watching light change across the landscape. "Nature is never truly silent," he explained, "when you learn to listen." Then, he taught him to distinguish between solitude and loneliness. Solitude is a choice that brings freedom. Loneliness is a feeling of separation. One is a garden we cultivate, the other, a wall we build. The third teaching involved recognizing the inner treasure everyone carries. The monk asked the scholar to close his eyes and place his hand over his heart. "The wisdom you seek from others already lives here," he said. "Most spend their lives searching outside for what they already possess within." Finally, the monk shared the practice of emotional independence. "Just as this hut needs a strong foundation to withstand storms," he explained, "you must build inner strength to face life's challenges without crumbling. When you no longer depend on others for your happiness, every moment with them becomes a gift rather than a necessity." The scholar stayed for several days, practicing these teachings. On his final morning, watching the sunrise together, the monk said, "Remember, being alone does not mean being incomplete. It means having the opportunity to discover your wholeness." As the scholar prepared to leave, he realized something had changed. The silence that once seemed threatening now felt peaceful. The solitude that once appeared empty now seemed rich with possibility. He understood that learning to be happy alone wasn't about isolation. It was about finding the universe within himself. "Thank you for showing me that I need not fear my own company," the scholar said. The monk simply nodded and smiled. The happiest people know how to be alone without feeling lonely. This is the power of self-sufficiency, not needing, yet still appreciating. Not depending, yet still connecting. Now that you understand the power of self-sufficiency, you might be wondering, but what about the emptiness I feel when someone leaves my life? What about that painful yearning for connection? This is where most people get stuck. You might recognize yourself in this pattern. Clinging desperately to relationships, feeling incomplete without someone's approval, or believing happiness only comes when others fill your emptiness. But what if I told you this attachment is the very thing causing your suffering? The story I'm about to share contains a profound truth that might initially seem counterintuitive. Yet, once you understand it, you'll never look at your flaws or emptiness the same way again. This ancient Buddhist wisdom has liberated countless people from the prison of dependency. Are you ready to discover how letting go actually brings more into your life? Listen carefully, because this second lesson might be exactly what you've been searching for all along. In a small mountain village, there lived an elderly water carrier who had served his community for decades. Every morning, he would carry 2 large buckets on a pole across his shoulders from the river to the village temple. What made this water carrier unique was that one of his buckets had a crack. During the journey uphill, water would slowly leak out, leaving the bucket half empty by the time he reached his destination. The perfect bucket always delivered a full portion of water, while the cracked one arrived only half full. For years, the cracked bucket felt ashamed of its imperfection, believing it was failing in its purpose. One morning, gathering courage, it spoke to the water carrier. "I must apologize for my flaw. Because of my crack, you work so hard, yet receive only half the result you deserve from me." The water carrier smiled gently and said, "I want to show you something." The next morning, as they made their journey, he asked the bucket to notice the path on its side of the road. To the bucket's surprise, beautiful wildflowers grew all along its side of the path, while the other side remained bare. "I've always known about your crack," the carrier explained, "so I planted flower seeds along your side of the path. Every day as we walk, you water them. For years, these flowers have brightened the temple and brought joy to all who visit. Without your crack, this beauty would not exist." This story teaches us the second Buddhist lesson about happiness in solitude, freedom from compulsive attachment to perfection and expectations. Just as the bucket learned to see value in what it considered a flaw, we must learn to release our tight grip on how we believe things should be. Many of us suffer because we cling to ideals about relationships, companionship, and validation from others. We think happiness can only come when someone else fills our emptiness. But this attachment actually creates our suffering. The water carrier showed wisdom in not trying to fix or replace the cracked bucket. Instead, he found creative value in accepting things as they were. Similarly, when we find ourselves alone, we often try to fix this condition rather than exploring its unique gifts. The Buddhist teaching of non-attachment doesn't ask us to stop caring. Rather, it invites us to hold life more gently. When we cling desperately to people, outcomes, or even self-images, we create tension that prevents natural joy from flowing. Just as the bucket discovered its unexpected purpose in watering flowers, our times of solitude may nourish growth we cannot yet see. The spaces between our relationships aren't empty voids to be filled, but fertile ground where new parts of ourselves can blossom. When we practice releasing our grip on expectations, especially expectations about needing others to feel complete, we discover a lightness of being. The fear of being alone diminishes when we stop fighting against our present reality. Remember, even the crack in the bucket, what seemed like a flaw, created a garden. Perhaps what you perceive as lack in your life is actually making space for something beautiful to grow. You've learned to become self-sufficient and to release your attachments, powerful steps toward freedom. But here's where many people still struggle. Even when physically alone, their minds remain crowded with noise, regrets, anxieties, and endless distractions. Does this sound familiar? You finally get some time to yourself, but instead of peace, you find restlessness. Instead of clarity, you encounter chaos. What if I told you that the quality of your solitude determines the quality of your entire life? The story I'm about to share contains a simple yet revolutionary practice that transforms empty hours into rich experiences. This third lesson has helped even the most restless minds find stillness in the midst of solitude. Pay close attention, because what you're about to learn isn't just about being comfortable alone. It's about experiencing a depth of presence that most people never discover in an entire lifetime. A young monk approached his teacher with troubled eyes. For weeks, he had been struggling with distractions during his meditation practice and felt he was making no progress toward peace. "Master," he said, "my mind constantly wanders to memories of friends and family. I worry about the future and replay conversations from the past. How can I find tranquility when my thoughts give me no rest?" Without speaking, the master invited the young monk to join him for tea. As they sat across from each other, the master began pouring tea into the monk's cup. He poured and poured until the cup overflowed, spilling across the table and onto the floor. Alarmed, the young monk cried out, "Master, the cup cannot hold any more. Why do you keep pouring?" With gentle eyes, the master set down the teapot. "Like this cup," he said, "your mind is already full. How can you receive new experiences, new wisdom, or the simple joy of the present moment when you are filled to overflowing with thoughts of what is not here?" This simple lesson strikes at the heart of our struggle with solitude. Many find being alone difficult because they bring a crowded mind to an empty room. The art of mindful presence teaches us to empty the cup first. True solitude is not merely the absence of others, but the presence of oneself fully and completely in the current moment. When we achieve this state, we discover that loneliness dissolves, not because we've eliminated the condition of being alone, but because we've filled that space with genuine awareness. The practice begins with recognizing the richness available in silence. Most people fear quiet moments and rush to fill them with noise music, television, endless scrolling, or meaningless conversations. But silence is not empty. It is full of subtle sounds we rarely notice. Our breathing, the wind against windows, distant birds, the hum of life continuing around us. Through mindfulness, ordinary solitary activities transform into profound experiences. A simple meal eaten alone with full attention becomes a direct connection to the farmers who grew the food, the rain and sun that nourished it, and the ancient cycle of seasons that makes life possible. Nothing is truly separate when observed with clear awareness. The young monk learned to practice walking meditation, giving complete attention to each step, feeling the earth support him, noticing the miracle of movement without rushing to reach a destination. He discovered that washing dishes could become a contemplative practice when he felt the warmth of the water and appreciated the simple pleasure of transforming something soiled into something clean. Most importantly, he began to observe his thoughts without becoming entangled in them. Like watching clouds pass across the sky, he noticed worries, memories, and plans drift through his mind without grasping or pushing them away. This subtle shift in perspective, being the observer rather than the thoughts themselves, created inner spaciousness. As the master explained, when you sit alone with nothing to distract you, you face yourself directly. This can be uncomfortable at first, like muscles sore from disuse. But with practice, you develop the strength to be present with whatever arises. The young monk gradually discovered that what he had been seeking through distraction was already available in each moment, if only he had the courage to be fully present for it. The teachings revealed that we are never truly alone when we dissolve the imaginary boundaries between ourselves and the world around us. By now, you're beginning to understand that being alone isn't about isolation. It's about discovering the richness of your own company. But here's the critical question. What kind of relationship do you have with yourself? Be honest. Are you your own worst critic? Do you speak to yourself with kindness or cruelty? Many people treat strangers better than they treat themselves. Here's a startling truth. The relationship you have with yourself sets the foundation for every other relationship in your life. When you can't stand your own company, you'll accept almost anyone else's, even those who diminish you. The story I'm about to share reveals the fourth Buddhist lesson, perhaps the most transformative of all. This wisdom has helped countless people end the war within themselves and discover a companionship that never leaves. Listen carefully, because what you're about to learn might just heal the longest-standing relationship in your life, the one with the person you see in the mirror. A devoted student traveled far to meet a renowned Buddhist teacher, hoping to find the path to enlightenment. After days of journey, he arrived at the small hermitage and bowed before the elder master. "I have come seeking the Buddha," the student declared. "I have studied texts, performed rituals, and meditated for years, yet I feel I have made little progress. Where might I find the true Buddha?" The master pointed to a nearby pond. "Look there and tell me what you see." The student approached the still water and peered at his reflection. "I see only myself," he answered, disappointed. "Look again," instructed the master. "Look deeper." The student gazed more intently at his reflection, noticing how it changed with each breath, with each slight movement, with each passing cloud reflected in the water. "The Buddha you seek is not separate from the one who seeks," the master explained gently. "The most important relationship you will ever have is with yourself, yet it is the one most people neglect." This fourth Buddhist lesson teaches us that before we can find happiness in solitude or with others, we must cultivate a healthy relationship with ourselves. Many run from being alone because they haven't learned to be good company for themselves. The master taught the student 4 essential practices. First was the mirror of self-reflection, not the harsh self-criticism many mistake for introspection, but gentle, curious observation of one's thoughts, feelings, and patterns without judgment. "Would you speak to a dear friend the way you speak to yourself?" the master asked. Begin treating yourself with the same kindness you offer others. The second practice involved becoming one's own teacher. The master explained that while guides are valuable, true wisdom emerges when we learn to trust our inner compass. Stop searching outside yourself for answers that can only be found within, he advised. The questions you ask yourself are often more important than answers given by others. Next came the practice of self-friendship. The student learned to spend time with himself as he would with a valued friend, listening attentively to his own needs, celebrating his strengths, accepting his limitations with compassion, and making time for activities that brought genuine joy rather than mere distraction. The final practice involved nurturing his inner garden, carefully tending to helpful thoughts and qualities while gently weeding out harmful ones. "Your mind is like soil," the master explained. "Whatever you plant and water will grow. Are you cultivating peace, generosity, and wisdom, or anxiety, resentment, and doubt?" As days passed into weeks, the student began to notice subtle shifts. The voice in his head became kinder, more encouraging. He found himself enjoying simple solitary activities that once made him restless. Most surprisingly, he discovered depths within himself that had been obscured by his constant seeking elsewhere. "When you truly befriend yourself," the master observed, "you are never really alone. And when you no longer flee from your own company, your connections with others become choices made from wholeness rather than attempts to fill emptiness." The student realized that his search for the Buddha outside himself had been preventing him from recognizing his own Buddha nature within. The path wasn't about becoming someone different, but about befriending who he already was. "Remember," the master said, as they sat watching fireflies dance in the evening air, "loneliness comes not from being alone, but from feeling disconnected from yourself. This is why even people surrounded by others can feel isolated, while those who have made peace with themselves can find joy in solitude." We've come to our final lesson, and if you've been applying what you've learned so far, you've already experienced profound shifts. But there's one ultimate truth that completes this journey, a secret that transforms solitude from something you merely tolerate into something you actually celebrate. Most people spend their lives avoiding being alone, never discovering the unique gifts that only bloom in solitude. They miss the special strengths, insights, and creative powers that can't develop any other way. What if the very thing you've been avoiding is actually your greatest opportunity for growth? The story I'm about to share contains the fifth and final Buddhist lesson, a wisdom that reveals how your solitary path isn't a detour from happiness, but potentially the most direct route to it. Pay special attention, because what you're about to learn doesn't just make being alone okay. It reveals how solitude might be the very soil in which your most authentic self can finally flourish. As our journey through these 5 Buddhist lessons comes to an end, take a moment to reflect on what you've discovered today. The power of self-sufficiency, the freedom that comes from releasing attachment, the richness of mindful presence, the healing of self-friendship, and the unique joy found only in the solitary path. These teachings aren't merely ancient philosophy, they're practical wisdom for modern life. Wisdom that transforms the experience of being alone from something you fear into something you treasure. Remember, true happiness never depends on external circumstances. It's always available to you, right here, right now, in your own company. If these lessons have touched something within you, if you feel even a subtle shift in how you view solitude, then our time together has been well spent. But this is just the beginning of your journey. I create these videos to share timeless Buddhist wisdom that has the power to transform everyday struggles into opportunities for growth and peace. If you'd like to continue this journey with me, please subscribe to this channel. Each week, I share stories and practices that bring ancient teachings into your modern life. And if you know someone who struggles with being alone, a friend going through a breakup, a family member living by themselves, or anyone who might benefit from these lessons, please share this video with them. Wisdom grows when shared, and your simple act of sharing might be exactly what someone needs today. Thank you for your presence and attention. Until next time, may you discover the infinite richness of your own company.